The room went silent. The judge looked up from the sealed envelope like he had just seen a ghost. Then the document appeared, an old property deed, yellowed with age, stamped with the county seal. My uncle, Raymond Hale, sat stiff at the defendant table in his tailored navy suit. His jaw twitched like it was about to crack. Across the aisle, my stepmother Diane clutched her pearls dramatically, already rehearsing her tears. And then the judge said the words that made my blood turn cold. "This deed was filed in 1998, Judge Whitaker announced, voice firm. It names the sole rightful heir to the Hale estate land." He paused, long enough for the courtroom cameras to catch Raymond's panic. Then he read the name. Ethan Hale. That was me, the quiet nephew, the one they called a nobody, the one who was supposed to sign everything away and disappear. I froze, not because I was shocked I had won. I froze because I knew what came next. Raymond didn't hide that deed for 20 years just to lose politely today. The courtroom murmured, but the judge raised his hand. "Mr. Raymond Hale, you will explain why this deed was hidden from probate records, why a replacement deed was submitted last year, and why this court should not refer this matter to criminal investigation." Raymond stood slowly. He smiled like a man who had practiced smiling over guilt his whole life. "Your Honor," Raymond said, calm as ice, "that deed is a forgery." Diane gasped like she'd been stabbed. Raymond turned toward me and pointed. "My nephew was desperate. He has no money, no future. He stole our family documents and fabricated this." 20 heads turned toward me, and just like that, I was back in my old place, accused, dismissed, treated like trash. Flashback hit like a punch. Raymond had taken me in after my father died. He said, "Family takes care of family." But what he meant was, family uses family. For years, I fixed his rental houses, handled his paperwork, worked his construction accounts. He paid me barely enough to survive, and every time I asked about my father's inheritance, he'd laugh. "You're not built for ownership. You're built for labor." Then, last month, everything changed. I got a call from a bank. A voice said, "Mr. Hale, we need the safe deposit key for your father's box." I told them I didn't have it. The banker replied, "That's strange, because your uncle used a key yesterday." That night, I went to my late father's old shed behind the ruined family house, and under a loose floorboard, I found a tiny brass key taped to a folded note. The note only had 3 words, "Trust the safe." I didn't know yet that key would drag my uncle into court, destroy his perfect image, and rewrite my entire bloodline. But now, in court, the judge stared down at Raymond. "If it is a forgery, then you won't mind submitting your original deed for forensic review." Raymond's smile flickered. He leaned toward his attorney and whispered something fast, and I saw it, the first crack in his confidence. Because Raymond didn't have the original, he never did. And suddenly, I realized the sealed envelope wasn't even the biggest proof I had. The safe key in my pocket was, and I was about to use it. But then the judge called out, "Bring in the evidence from the deposit box." A bailiff walked in carrying a black lockbox. Raymond's eyes widened in terror because he knew what was inside before anyone else did. In whatever it was, could destroy him forever. After court adjourned for lunch, I sat in the hallway outside the courtroom, hands clenched, staring at the lockbox like it was alive. Raymond paced 10 feet away, whispering into his phone. Diane watched me with hatred, like I'd stolen something that belonged to her. The funny part? I hadn't stolen anything. They stole it from me. For years, I was the quiet worker in my uncle's world. He owned the houses, I fixed them. He attended meetings with bankers and lawyers, I carried his tools and signed his delivery forms. Whenever distant relatives visited, Raymond would clap his hand on my shoulder and joke, "This is Ethan. He's not the smart one, but he's useful." Everyone laughed, including me,
because I thought laughter was survival. Then came the humiliation that shaped me. My father, Thomas Hale, died when I was 19. He left behind land, real land, passed down from Grandpa Hale. It wasn't just property, it was legacy. At the funeral, Raymond hugged me and whispered, "I'll handle everything." I believed him. A week later, he invited me to his office. A stack of documents waited on the table. "Sign this," he said, not looking up. "What is it?" I asked. He sighed like I was wasting oxygen. "Transfer paperwork. It's complicated, legal stuff. You're not equipped for it." I was young, broke, grieving, so I signed. And when I asked about the land, he smiled. "Your dad didn't leave you anything. He left debts. Be grateful I took you in." That was the lie that ruled my life. Until last month. The bank call wasn't an accident. Someone wanted that safe deposit box opened. Someone who believed I wouldn't notice, but I noticed everything. Because when you're treated like furniture, you learn to watch. I went to the county records office and requested old property filings. A clerk pulled a dusty file and slid it across the counter. Inside was the truth. My father never sold his stake, never signed it away. The signature on the replacement deed filed last year wasn't even close to his handwriting. It was Raymond's handwriting trying to become my father's. I felt the world tilt. Then I remembered the brass key under the shed. I drove straight to the bank. The clerk looked nervous when I showed my ID. "We were told only your uncle," she began. I leaned in, calm. "And you were told wrong." She led me to a private room. Inside waited the safe deposit box. The lock clicked when I inserted the brass key, like it belonged there. The moment the box opened, I found a sealed envelope stamped "Hale Family Trust, do not open until probate." Under it were copies of emails, handwritten notes, and a flash drive labeled, "Raymond, if you're reading this, you failed." My heart pounded. My father had prepared for betrayal. That's when I contacted an old name on the letterhead inside the box, Victor Cruz, attorney at law, Grandpa Hale's lawyer. Victor answered on the second ring. "I was wondering when you'd call," he said quietly. Back in the hallway, Victor arrived with a leather folder and the calm of a man who has fought dirty families before. "Raymond thinks you're alone," Victor whispered, "but you're not." I nodded toward the lockbox. "That's not even the worst part," I said. Victor raised an eyebrow. "What else is there?" I reached into my pocket and pulled out the flash drive. Victor's face changed. His voice went low. "Ethan, where did you get this?" Before I could answer, the courtroom doors opened again, and the bailiff called, "All parties return immediately. The court will now review the contents of the lockbox." Raymond stopped pacing. For the first time, he looked truly scared, because he knew the lockbox wasn't his weapon anymore. It was mine. When we returned to the courtroom, Raymond acted like he owned the air. He smiled at the cameras, he adjusted his cufflinks, he even patted Diane's hand like she was the victim. But I knew something he didn't. My father had left breadcrumbs, and Raymond had stepped on every single one. Judge Whitaker ordered the lockbox opened at the clerk's desk. Everyone leaned forward. The first item inside was a notarized deed copy. The second was a sealed envelope marked with the trust stamp. Victor Cruz stood beside me, quiet but dangerous. Raymond's attorney stood quickly. "Your Honor, we object to any evidence obtained through unauthorized access." Judge Whitaker raised one eyebrow. "Unauthorized?" he asked. "This box is registered to Thomas Hale. His heir is currently under review." Raymond's throat moved. I watched him carefully, not like family, like an opponent. The clerk unsealed the envelope. Inside was a letter written in my father's handwriting. The judge began reading aloud. "To whoever is sitting in this courtroom, if Raymond Hale claims the land is his, he is lying. I never sold it, I never transferred it. If you found this, then my son Ethan has done what I prayed he would. Stay quiet and pay attention." Murmurs erupted. Diane's face turned pale. Raymond slammed his hand on the table. "That's fake," he barked. But the judge continued. "I keep copies of all documents in my safe deposit box. Raymond will try to replace them. He will forge. He will pressure Ethan. He will use shame and family to steal legacy." My chest tightened. Even dead, my father saw him perfectly. The judge flipped the page. "And if Raymond says Ethan is not the rightful heir, order a blood test, because Raymond is not who he says he is." The entire courtroom froze. Even Victor's face sharpened. Raymond's attorney stood again, voice urgent. "Your Honor, this is outrageous." Judge Whitaker looked straight at Raymond. "Outrageous is hiding property deeds. Outrageous is filing replacement deeds under suspicious signatures." Then he leaned forward. "Mr. Hale, do you deny the possibility that you are not blood related to Thomas Hale?" Raymond's jaw clenched. He laughed, too loud, too sharp. "This is insanity," he snapped. "I grew up with Thomas. I was his brother." Victor stepped forward. "We're requesting a DNA test," Victor said simply. "And we're requesting immediate freezing of all estate-related assets until results return." Diane jumped up. "No, that land belongs to my husband." Raymond turned toward Diane and hissed, "Sit down." That sentence revealed everything. Not love, not family, control. The judge banged his gavel. "Order granted. DNA samples will be taken today, assets frozen, effective immediately." Raymond's face turned red. Outside the courtroom, I breathed like I had been underwater for years. Victor leaned close. "You understand what you just did?" he asked. "I protected what my father left me," I said. Victor nodded, then opened his folder. "There's more," he said. "While you were digging in county records, I dug in corporate filings." He handed me a photocopy, a business registration document, a company, Hale Development LLC. Owner, Thomas Hale, not Raymond. My stomach dropped. Raymond wasn't just stealing land, he was stealing a company too. And then Victor said the line that turned my blood cold. "Raymond sold portions of that company last month using your father's name." I stared at the document. Forgery, fraud, a criminal empire built on my father's death. I turned toward the courthouse doors. Raymond stood at the top of the steps, phone pressed to his ear. He looked directly at me, and even from that distance, I could read his lips. "This ends tonight."
That night, Ethan Hale came home and found police cars in the driveway. Not random cops, county deputies. One of them stepped forward with a clipboard. "Ethan Hale?" he asked. "Yes," I answered calmly. The deputy glanced at the paperwork. "We have a legal removal order. This property was sold under Raymond Hale's authority." I stared at the front door. The locks were changed. My house, my father's house, the place Raymond said was mine to stay in, but the papers said otherwise. Diane stood on the porch like a queen. She crossed her arms and smiled. "Oh, Ethan," she said sweetly, "you really thought you could fight family?" Behind her, Raymond appeared. He didn't smile. He looked tired, like anger had eaten him all day. "Don't make this harder," Raymond said. "You want to play lawyer? Fine, but you will not sleep under my roof again." "My roof," I corrected quietly. Raymond's eyes flashed. The deputy cleared his throat. "Sir, if you don't leave, we'll escort you." I nodded. Understood. No screaming, no begging. Because I had learned years ago, they wanted me to break. Raymond wanted to watch the quiet nephew finally lose it. Instead, I walked to my truck and grabbed one bag. I didn't look back. Not yet. Because I still had the safe key. I still had the flash drive. I still had Victor Cruz.
and I still had my father's last letter. I drove to a cheap motel on the edge of town. Victor met me there an hour later. "They're escalating," he said. I handed him my phone. "Look at this." I had forwarded him an email chain. It was from Raymond's construction office, accidentally sent to my old work address. Subject line: Ethan removal, final step. Inside, it were instructions: change locks, transfer utilities, file emergency sale. If Ethan returns, call deputies. Victor's face hardened. "This is retaliation," he said. "It's more than that," I replied. I opened my laptop, pulled up county filings. Raymond had filed something else today, a petition, to declare me mentally unstable, to block me from inheritance claims. Victor leaned forward. "Then we hit him where it hurts." I pulled out the flash drive. "This contains recordings," I said. "My father predicted Raymond would forge. He recorded meetings. He saved emails." Victor stared at it like a loaded gun. "If this is real," he whispered, "Raymond isn't just losing property. He's going to prison," I said. Victor placed the flash drive into his pocket. "Tomorrow we file a motion for emergency access to the bank's security footage." I blinked. "Security footage?" Victor nodded. "The bank, the safe deposit box. Raymond opened it yesterday, remember?" My pulse spiked. "That means—" I began. "Yes," Victor finished. "We can prove he tampered with evidence." That night, I barely slept. I kept hearing Raymond's voice. "This ends tonight." At 2:11 a.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number. One message. "You think the safe key makes you powerful? You don't even know what it unlocks. Meet me at the old Hale barn tomorrow. Come alone." My hands went cold. Victor was right. Raymond wasn't just fighting in court. He was hunting. And for the first time, I realized my father's safe key might unlock something far more dangerous than a deed.
The next morning, Ethan didn't go to the barn, because Ethan wasn't foolish, and he wasn't alone. Victor Cruz contacted an investigator he trusted, a retired detective named Mason Greer, a quiet man with sharp eyes and a law badge that still made people nervous. "I'll check the barn," Mason said. "You focus on court." In Victor's office, he laid out the strategy like a battlefield map. Raymond's biggest weapon wasn't his money, it was his image. He looked like the perfect family man, the successful businessman, the loyal brother. So we had to expose the truth with proof so clean the judge couldn't ignore it. Victor opened a thick binder. "Your father built a legal trap," he explained. "He added a protective clause in the original trust document." I leaned forward. "What clause?" Victor slid a photocopy toward me. "Hale Trust Clause 11B," it read. Victor tapped it with his finger. "This clause states if any party attempts to forge deeds, replace ownership documents, or file unauthorized transfer paperwork, the entire trust triggers an automatic reversal, restoring the property and all assets to the biological heir." My chest tightened. So the moment Raymond forged, he triggered his own downfall, Victor said. Then he added, voice low, "But only one person could activate that clause." I frowned. "Who?" Victor looked me directly. "The true beneficiary," he said. "The name written in the original trust." I swallowed. "And that's me." Victor nodded. "Yes, but the court needs confirmation." He held up the DNA test request order. "Today they take samples. Tomorrow we get results. And then you become untouchable." Before I could respond, Mason Greer called. Victor put him on speaker. "Barn was empty, but I found something you should see." A pause. Then Mason's voice dropped. "There's a safe hidden under the hay floor. Old steel, heavy, professional." I froze. "A second safe?" I whispered. Mason continued. "Someone tried to open it recently. Fresh scrape marks. In Ethan, there was blood." My stomach twisted. Raymond was trying to open something hidden.
something my father never moved into the bank. Victor's eyes turned sharp. "That safe key you found," Victor said slowly. "It might not be for the bank." I stared at the brass key in my palm. The note, trust, the safe. My father didn't say bank, he said safe. Victor grabbed his coat. "We go to that barn," he said. I hesitated. "That's what Raymond wants." Victor shook his head. "No, Raymond wants you alone. We bring witnesses." We drove out to the old Hale barn. It stood on the edge of the family land like a skeleton. Mason met us there. He pulled back hay and revealed a steel door set into the floor. A hidden safe. My hand shook as I slid the brass key into the lock. Click. It turned perfectly. Victor exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for years. I opened the safe. Inside was a black folder, sealed in plastic. On the front was one sentence in my father's handwriting. "Raymond is not a Hale." I ripped it open. The first document inside was a birth certificate. Name, Raymond Hale. Father, unknown. Mother, Margaret Hale. I flipped the next page. Adoption papers. Raymond wasn't my father's brother. He was Grandma Hale's secret child, raised as family, but not blood. Then I found the final item, a confession letter from Grandpa Hale, and the first line made my heart stop. "If Raymond ever tries to steal Ethan's inheritance, release this letter in court, and the police will know the truth about the fire." I stared at Victor. "The fire?" I whispered. Victor's face turned dark. "What fire?" he asked. At that exact moment, my phone rang again. Unknown number. Raymond's voice came through, smiling. "You opened it, didn't you?" he said. "Good. Now you know why your father died."
Raymond's voice stayed in Ethan's ear like poison. "Now you know why your father died." Ethan stared at the confession letter, fingers trembling. The air inside the barn felt colder, thicker, like the past was breathing down his neck. Victor held out his hand. "Give me that," he demanded. Ethan handed him the letter. Victor read silently for 10 seconds. Then his face drained of color. "What does it say?" Ethan asked, voice tight. Victor looked up slowly. "It says your father didn't die from bad luck," Victor whispered. "He died because someone removed the fire alarms from the Hale property warehouse 2 weeks before the explosion." Ethan's stomach dropped. 18 years ago, the Hale warehouse burned down. The official report blamed faulty wiring. It killed one worker and badly injured another. Thomas Hale, Ethan's father, had been the one who fought the insurance company to pay victims. And after that, Thomas's health declined. A heart attack took him early. Ethan had always assumed grief did it. Life did it. But now the letter suggested something else. Victor read more. "Raymond begged for shares," Victor said quietly. "Your grandfather refused, and then Raymond—" Victor stopped, like he couldn't finish. Mason Greer clenched his jaw. "Read it," Mason ordered. Victor did. "Your grandfather wrote that Raymond bribed an inspector and removed safety systems to force a fire. The fire would destroy records, and the insurance payout would fund Raymond's takeover plan." Ethan felt like the floor tilted. "So my uncle," Ethan whispered, "he murdered people?" Victor nodded. "And then," Victor continued, "your father found proof. He threatened to go public." Ethan's hands went cold, and Raymond stopped him. Silence filled the barn. Then Mason spoke. "If this letter is real, we can open a criminal case." Victor tucked the letter into his folder like it was fragile but lethal. "We use court first, criminal later." Ethan looked down into the safe again. There was one more item beneath the documents, a small ring binder wrapped in oilcloth. Ethan opened it. Inside was an accountant ledger, old but detailed, amounts, dates, wire transfers, and the name repeated like a curse. R. Hale,
cash payments, city inspector. Ethan's pulse spiked. Real proof, he whispered. Victor nodded. Part 6 shock twist. The villain is not blood-related, and he's linked to a major crime. Ethan felt rage rise like fire in his chest. But he didn't scream. He didn't break. He did what he always did. He collected evidence. Back at Victor's office, they prepared the next court strike. Ethan backed up the ledger and letter in 3 places: email chain backup, hard drive, cloud folder under a fake name, because Ethan understood something now. Raymond doesn't fight fists, he fights systems. That evening, a knock hit Ethan's motel door. Not soft, not friendly, hard. Ethan peeked through the curtain. 2 men in suits stood outside, no badge visible. One spoke through the door. "Mr. Hale," the man said, "we're from the County Fraud Investigation Unit." Ethan's stomach tightened. Victor had told him to expect pressure. Ethan opened the door slowly. The man held up a warrant. "We need to confiscate any documents related to the Hale estate immediately." Ethan's eyes narrowed, because the seal on the warrant wasn't county. It was a cheap, copied stamp, fake. And before Ethan could react, the second man stepped forward and shoved a gun into Ethan's ribs. "Hand over the safe key," the man hissed, "or you won't make it to court tomorrow."
Ethan didn't move. The gun pressed harder. "Safe key," the man repeated, angry now. Ethan raised his hand slowly, but his mind was calm, because he had already predicted this. Ethan had been underestimated his whole life. That was his advantage. He didn't keep evidence in one place, he kept it everywhere. Victor had taught him, a quiet man survives by redundancy. Ethan spoke carefully. "You're not county fraud," Ethan said. "You're Raymond's cleanup crew." The man with the fake warrant smirked. "Smart. Too smart. That's why you're a problem." Ethan nodded. "Yes." Then he did something that made both men pause. He smiled. The gunman hesitated. "What are you smiling at?" Ethan's voice stayed steady. "You're on camera." The gunman froze. "What?" Ethan tilted his head toward the ceiling corner. A tiny blinking red light. A tiny motel security camera. The first man lunged to rip it down. But it wasn't motel property. It was Ethan's. A mini camera he installed the moment Raymond threatened him. The fake agent grabbed Ethan by the collar. "You little." Ethan's phone buzzed in his pocket. A single text message appeared on screen, previewed clearly. "Mason. Cop cars en route. Hold them." Ethan exhaled. He had called Mason Greer earlier and told him, "If anyone comes for the key, they'll come tonight." Mason had prepared a sting. The gunman cursed. "Move." They rushed toward the back exit, but Mason Greer was already there. Not alone. Real deputies. Real badges. The door burst open. "Drop the weapon," Mason shouted. The gunman fired. Glass shattered. Ethan ducked instinctively. Then chaos erupted. The 2 men tried to flee, but deputies tackled them hard. One of them screamed as cuffs snapped on. Ethan stood slowly, heart pounding. Mason walked over, breathing heavy. "You okay?" he asked. Ethan nodded. "Yeah." Mason lowered his voice. "They're not talking yet, but we got something better." He pulled out a phone from evidence bag. They had a call log. Raymond's number is in it. Ethan's eyes burned. Victor arrived minutes later. He took one look at the arrested men and smiled without warmth. "Raymond just made the biggest mistake," Victor said. "He escalated into criminal intimidation." Ethan stared at the flashing police lights. "They'll still try to frame me," he said. Victor nodded. "Of course. And we let them." Ethan blinked. "What?" Victor leaned close. "We're going to bait him," Victor whispered. "We'll claim you forged the deed. We'll let Raymond think he's winning." Ethan's calm returned. "Because when he gets arrogant," Ethan said slowly, "he slips." Victor smiled.
Exactly. The next morning, court reconvened. Raymond arrived confident again, too confident. His attorney stood and accused Ethan publicly. This deed and letter were stolen. Mr. Ethan Hale fabricated evidence. He even hired criminals to stage an attack. Gasps filled the room. Raymond shook his head like he was heartbroken. Then Victor stood calmly. "Your Honor," Victor said, "we have security footage of 2 armed men arriving with a fake warrant. We have their call logs, and we have their confession video." Raymond's face twitched. What confession? Victor lifted a flash drive. Ethan's flash drive. Raymond went still, because now Ethan understood. The courtroom was not the battlefield. The courtroom was the trap, and Raymond had just walked into it. Judge Whitaker leaned forward. "Play the recording," he ordered. Victor nodded. The bailiff inserted the flash drive into the court system, and the screen lit up. But it wasn't the confession video. It was something else. A private recording from years ago. Raymond's voice filled the courtroom. "Thomas, if you don't sign the land over, accidents happen." Raymond stood up screaming, but the judge's eyes went ice cold. "Silence," Judge Whitaker said. "Mr. Hale, you just threatened the deceased." Raymond froze, because now the court knew. He hadn't just stolen, he had hunted.
Raymond's attorney tried to shut everything down. "Your Honor, that audio is manipulated." Judge Whitaker didn't blink. "Then we verify it," he said. He turned toward the bailiff. "Secure the evidence. Bring in the forensic examiner." Raymond's confidence cracked again. Ethan watched it happen like slow motion. All those years Raymond humiliated him. All those nights Ethan slept in the shadows of stolen legacy. This was the reversal. Victor moved like a surgeon now. "Your Honor," Victor said, "we request immediate court order to open the Hale Barnes safe on record under security and witness." The courtroom murmured. Raymond shouted, "That safe doesn't exist!" Victor smiled slightly. "That's strange," he said, "because we already photographed it, with location tags, with witness affidavits." Judge Whitaker nodded. Order granted. 2 hours later, they stood inside the courthouse evidence room. A camera crew recorded legally, court documentation. Deputies stood armed. The safe was transported in. Raymond was forced to attend. He looked like a man trying to breathe underwater. Judge Whitaker watched closely. "Mr. Ethan Hale," the judge said, "you claim you have the key." Ethan held up the brass key, the real one. Raymond's eyes locked onto it like it was a knife. Ethan inserted the key. Click. The safe opened with a sound that felt like destiny. Victor pulled out the contents slowly for the camera. First, adoption papers. Second, the ledger of bribes. Third, Grandpa's letter. Fourth, a sealed envelope stamped, "Second will, open in court only." Raymond exploded. "No!" he screamed, lurching forward. Deputies grabbed him instantly. Diane sobbed theatrically, but her eyes were terrified. She had built her entire identity on Raymond's stolen empire. Judge Whitaker's voice thundered. "Sit him down," he ordered. Victor held up the sealed envelope. "This," Victor said, "is the second will your uncle didn't want anyone to see." Judge Whitaker nodded. "Open it." Victor broke the seal carefully. He unfolded the will and began reading. "I, Harold Hale, declare that my grandson Ethan Hale is the rightful heir of the Hale estate land and Hale Development LLC." Raymond's face turned gray. Victor continued. "And if Raymond, who is not my blood heir, attempts to interfere, he is to receive nothing. No money, no property, no rights." The room went dead silent. Then Victor read the final paragraph. "I also instruct my attorney to submit attached proof of fraud and arson involvement to authorities."
Raymond screamed again. "This is a setup! My father, my family!" "This is a setup," he shouted. "My father, my family, this is—" Judge Whitaker cut him off. "You are not Harold Hale's heir," the judge said coldly. "According to the adoption papers, you are not even legally listed as Thomas Hale's brother." Raymond's lips trembled. The judge turned toward Mason Greer. "Detective," Judge Whitaker said, "prepare criminal referral on forgery, fraud, intimidation, and possible arson." Mason nodded. "Yes, Your Honor." Raymond looked at Ethan with pure hatred. "You think you won," he hissed. Ethan leaned closer, calm. "I didn't think," Ethan said. "I proved." Raymond's eyes narrowed. Then he smiled. A dangerous, desperate smile, because he still had one move left. He looked straight at Diane, and Diane nodded. At that exact moment, Ethan's phone buzzed. Victor glanced at the screen. His face changed instantly, because the message said, "Hale development files deleted. Check your email. You're too late."
Ethan's chest tightened as the message burned into his eyes. Hale development files deleted. Those were the company records Victor said could prove Raymond's fraud. Transfer logs, ownership clauses, stock documents. Without them, Raymond could still drag this into chaos. Victor grabbed Ethan's phone. "Who sent that?" he demanded. Ethan checked the number. Unknown. Blocked. Mason stepped in, voice sharp. "Someone inside your side leaked information," he said. Ethan's mind raced. Only 4 people knew about the safe: Victor, Mason, Ethan, and— Ethan's stomach dropped. The quiet assistant. Victor's assistant. The one who always brought coffee and helped organize files. Her name was Claire. She had seemed harmless, soft-spoken, supportive. She once told Ethan, "You deserve justice." She once looked Ethan in the eyes and whispered, "I hate men like Raymond." Now Ethan realized, that might have been acting. Victor's face darkened. "No," he muttered, "not Claire." Mason nodded. "Check your email access logs," he told Ethan. Ethan opened his laptop immediately. His inbox showed multiple login attempts overnight. One succeeded. Location? Raymond's business district. Ethan's hands shook. "She accessed my backups," Ethan whispered. Victor's phone rang. He stepped away. When he returned, his expression was cold rage. "She's gone," Victor said. "Claire cleaned her desk and disappeared an hour ago." Ethan's heart pounded. Raymond wasn't just a thief, he was a strategist. He planted someone inside Victor's office. Ethan swallowed hard. "So twist number 2, Ethan whispered. Victor nodded. The helper was the villain. Mason clenched his jaw. "I'm putting an APB on her." But Victor held up one hand. "No," he said. "Let her run." Ethan stared. "What?" Victor's eyes sharpened like steel. "If Claire ran, she ran with evidence, and evidence has weight. It can be tracked. It can be recovered." Ethan's quiet intelligence turned into focus. "The company files," Ethan said, thinking fast. "They weren't only digital." Victor's eyebrows rose. Ethan continued. "My father kept paper copies. The safe had one ledger. He believed in physical backups." Victor's eyes widened. "Where?" Ethan remembered something. In the bank box, under the sealed envelope, there had been a keychain tag, a storage unit tag. Unit 14C. Ethan pulled it up on his phone records. "Yes," Ethan whispered. "There was a storage unit." Victor smiled slowly. "Then we're not too late." That same evening, they drove to the storage facility. Mason arrived with deputies. Ethan held the Unit 14C key. The lock clicked. The door rolled up. Inside were boxes stacked neatly, labeled in Ethan's father's handwriting. "Hale Development LLC Original Shares." Email prints. Audio transcripts. CCTV copies. Ethan's breath caught. Victor opened the first box. Inside was a thick folder titled Raymond's Buyer. Victor's face stiffened. He flipped the pages.
Bank transfers, contracts, and a name that made Ethan's blood turn cold. The buyer of stolen shares was Diane. Not just Raymond. Diane had been buying ownership quietly, preparing to betray Raymond too. Mason whistled under his breath. This family is a nest of snakes. Ethan stared at the documents. Now he understood why Diane nodded in court. She didn't want Raymond free. She wanted him ruined, so she could take everything. Victor looked at Ethan. "Tomorrow," Victor said, "we expose Diane too." Ethan nodded. But before he could respond, the storage lights shut off suddenly. Darkness swallowed them. And in the dark, a calm voice spoke from behind the boxes. "Ethan, you really should have come alone."
The storage unit lights stayed off. Ethan's heart pounded, but his voice stayed calm. "Raymond," he said. A shadow moved. Then Raymond stepped forward, holding a flashlight like a weapon. But he wasn't alone. Claire stood beside him. The assistant. The snake. Victor's voice was low. "You're finished," he told Raymond. Raymond laughed. "You think paper boxes make you powerful?" he sneered. "I can burn paper." Mason raised his gun. "Raymond, step back," he warned. Raymond's eyes flickered toward the deputies at the entrance. "Too late," Raymond said, "because Diane already made her move." Ethan's stomach sank. Raymond pulled out his phone and showed a news alert. Hale Development LLC, emergency board vote, removes Ethan Hale from claims. Ethan froze for a split second. Victor snatched the phone. "That's illegal," Victor snapped. "The company's owner." Raymond smiled. "Who's going to prove ownership if your documents disappear tonight?" Claire stepped forward, voice quiet. "I copied everything," she said. "All your evidence. And I sent it to Diane." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "So she was the final villain," he murmured. Raymond shrugged. "Diane played me too," he admitted. "But here's the difference." He stepped closer. "I don't lose," Raymond hissed. "If I can't own it, no one will." He flicked the lighter in his hand. Victor moved first. Mason and deputies charged. But Ethan spoke suddenly, loud and calm. "Stop," Ethan said. Everyone froze, even Raymond. Ethan whiffed at his laptop. "I already emailed everything," Ethan said. "To the court, to state investigators, to the insurance fraud unit, to the arson division." Raymond blinked. "What?" Ethan's voice was steady, almost soft. "My father trained me," Ethan said. "He knew you'd try to destroy proof, so I set an auto-send trigger." Raymond's smile collapsed. Ethan took one step forward. "The moment Claire logged into my email," Ethan said, "my system released all files." Victor's eyes widened. He hadn't even known. Ethan didn't smile. "I stayed quiet," Ethan said. "I kept copies. I kept backups. I kept clauses." Raymond's hands trembled. Sirens erupted outside. Not deputies now. State investigators. Federal. More lights. More badges. Raymond looked around like a trapped animal. Judge Whitaker's voice came from a speakerphone in Mason's hand. Mason had called it in minutes ago. "Raymond Hale, you are under court order for arrest and seizure of assets. Your intimidation attempt has been documented." Raymond's face twisted. Claire tried to run, but deputies tackled her instantly. Raymond lunged toward Ethan. "You made me," he screamed. "You were nothing." Ethan didn't flinch. "You're right. I was nothing in your eyes." Then he leaned closer, voice cold. "But the law doesn't care about your eyes." Raymond was cuffed, dragged out, his perfect suit stained with dust. Diane was arrested the next day for fraud involvement. Hale Development shares were returned. The land deed was restored. Weeks later,
Ethan stood alone on the family land at sunrise. The wind moved through grass like forgiveness. Victor approached him. "You could rebuild the company," Victor said. "You could become a monster like them." Ethan shook his head. "I don't need to be loud. I just need to be right." He looked at the horizon, calm. Then he spoke the moral like a final court verdict. "They called me nobody until the judge read my name. Never underestimate the quiet man. Karma does not forget."